Trish is here to give us money back. She didn't spend it all.
So institutions back on track here. We have with us Laura Trishman from the State Historic Preservation Office and Jamie Duggan. Is it Dugan or Duggan?
Duggan.
Jamie Duggan, Director of Preservation, State Historic Sites. We're glad to have you here. And I think that you've always been on Zoom. Is this the first time in person in the last few years?
In the last few years.
Yeah, well, glad to have you in person.
Yes, I was excited to come in person.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Sorry for the delay. We had a lot to get going on that first one, but
No.
appreciate that you could hang around.
Jamie and I were emailing the whole time, like we need to get with Brian for the state historic sites.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, so I apologize, Jamie, as well, that it took the time that it did, but.
No problem. Important stuff.
Thanks for hanging around. It's what you have is important. We appreciate it.
We need a calendar for that wall, please. Okay,
Next time I'm here, Senator.
okay. Don't hurry, as long as you get it by.
I have one with trains on it. Would you prefer that?
No, I got a true one. I got a-
I'll bring a Fish and Wildlife one.
Something with bear traps.
Laura, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. As you said, my name is Laura Trishman, and it's been my honor to serve as the State Historic Preservation Officer since 2013, overseeing the Division for Historic Preservation. We have 7 items this year in the capital bill, but there's one I really want to focus on right now, if I may, and that's our largest program at the division, which is the state-owned historic sites. This program actually started in 1902 when the state of Vermont purchased the site where President Chester A. Arthur was born in Fairfield. 35 years later, the state received a transfer of lands associated with the Battle of Hubbardton, which is the only battle of the American Revolution fought on lands that would become Vermont. The historic sites officially opened in 1947, and today we steward 24 historic sites. So you need to add to your list of buildings that the state owns. We have 88 buildings, bridges, monuments, cemeteries. We even steward monuments that are in Virginia and Maryland.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, Senator Benning was the expert.
Oh, yes.
He
I
knew every,
know.
he knew every historical site outside of Vermont. He visited them all. It's amazing what Senator Benning knew about the historical sites. God, he covered them all, I think. Yeah.
And we have 919 acres of land, which is a lot of land. There's trails, forested areas. We actually just last year, through an executive order, transferred 300 acres at Coolidge to the Coolidge State Forest because they abutted and they're much better stewards to take care of that land than we are. We, of course, invite you to visit our state historic sites, which includes the home of 2 presidents, a United States senator that designed his own home, a Native American cemetery designated as the first Vermont archaeological landmark. That's up in Highgate Swanton area. A tavern where the Vermont Constitution was drafted and signed in July 1777, 19th century iron ore blast furnace. And of course, the second tallest reinforced masonry building in the United States. Yes, the first is the Washington Monument, which is the largest reinforced masonry building in the world. And we have so many more. Maybe for the first 10 years, I kept learning each day, like, wait, we own what? Where's that? The sites are open to the public from May to October. We scaled it back just a little bit during COVID. We have 3 sites that have not yet opened because of COVID. But our maintenance and stewardship is year-round. Our full-time staffing is year-round. We have a small staff of just 5 that includes the State Historic Sites Chief, a position I am going to offer to someone this afternoon, Director of Preservation, and 3 amazing site administrators that between them have about 100 years of knowledge, expertise, and dedication. I cannot get them to take vacation, personal time, use their comp. They're fabulous, wonderful people. And then each year we hire 60 seasonal temps. Some of those work year-round to monitor the properties for us. But these temporary seasonals work directly with our visitors. And we bring in about 63,000, 65,000 visitors a year. COVID hit us hard. Most of our visitors remained outside, and we don't have a way of tracking outdoor visitation. But our numbers aren't going back up. Maintenance has commonly been deferred, with the capital bill allocations traditionally topping $200,000 to $300,000 a year. Assessments, even going back to the 1950s, have outlined needs due to the high cost needs, but due to the high cost of those estimates, alternatives were often just fixing the immediate problems or stabilizing a structure for work later, and later never came.
We put a lot of money in the bank, money
We have.
over the years. tons of
Yes.
money.
Yes, we have. But we've been using a Band-Aid approach because of our limited funding. Over the past 10 years, we have deaccessioned a number of buildings that did not belong in the state ownership, or most recently, it was the New Haven Depot that we needed to move because of Amtrak.
Yep.
And the town was willing to take ownership. So that actually worked out to be an absolutely
we're lucky
wonderful
there.
partnership.
That was
Yeah.
a lot of work.
Moved on the coldest day of last year. So we're pushing issues further down the road until maintenance becomes a major problem for public and staff safety. And it affects our income because we're having to close some of these buildings down. And that affects our program stability. We are funded with general fund, which primarily covers permanent staff salaries, and special fund, which is our income from admissions and our 5 gift shops. So when we close something, we feel it.
How much revenue do you generate amongst all your admissions and fees that you charge and gift shops and all of that?
It's about $500,000. This year, we're increasing our fees for the historic sites. And last year, we got a new electronic system, Clover, that motor vehicle uses. And we're able to track all of our visitors. That way we know exactly who's a Green Mountain Pass, who's got a library pass, how many kids. And it's really helping us keep track of everything much better.
A lot of private donations.
We don't get many donations. There are a couple sites that only take donations because there's no bank nearby.
Take credit cards.
At most of the sites.
You don't have to today because you're not gonna, nobody carries cash anymore.
At most of the sites, but that's something that we're definitely working on. The capital bill periodically has included specific line items, like you mentioned, Senator Mazza, for large projects, such as replacing the 1956 elevator at the Bennington
I mean,
Mall.
that was a lot of money.
Or construction of a museum and education center that happened down at, we did one at at Mount Independence and Calvin Coolidge State Historic Sites. Or establishing an archaeology curation center over in the History Center in Barry. But all of the historic sites need major maintenance, and at this point, we can't focus on any one project while the others are waiting. With the assistance of BGS and conditions assessments from 2018 and a few from 2022, we've been able to prioritize the most urgent projects and based on the significance of those sites and buildings. So we're focusing on those that generate the greatest income and are open more often. So per the capital bill from last fiscal year, we're undertaking new conditions assessments for all of the sites that will outline the project for 5-20 years, give us long-range plans. We're using BGS as a model. They've been fantastic partners. This conditions assessments will also be more accurate to historic preservation. When we had conditions assessments done in 2018, they were like, oh, you need to replace the windows at the Justin Morrill House. They're like 130 years old. And I was like, not gonna happen. That's the point. So we need a conditions assessment that is more specific to our needs. So a couple of these projects that I really wanted to focus on. In 2021, we started the long process of having the Bennington Monument evaluated for a full year, examining its condition, identifying the structural and safety issues now and expected. The building's interior changes during all 4 seasons. The elevator might have had something to do with that because it's different than what was in there. It's hotter. We have a nationally recognized team that is outlining steps imperative to the preservation of this iconic building, ensuring that we can keep it open and safe to walk around. The Capitol Bill is right now supporting the first-year study with finalized reports and cost estimates expected in April, which we'll share with you when we get them. And the Capitol Bill is needed to continue this study with a deeper dive into monitoring exterior cracks. We have the interior ones already being monitored. Falling of stone. Each morning, our site administrator goes around and picks up stone and mortar from the perimeter of the monument. And we're deathly afraid somebody and or their dog are going to get hurt. Not to mention the lawnmowers that could then shoot that out. We also need to identify the sources of these damages. One side of the monument is being affected more than the others, and they're not exactly sure why. Why the stone is failing, some of it on the interior. Study the moisture and temperature changes. It actually has layers of ice, much like on the stone out the window, on the interior of the building. And in the summer, it will rain inside the building. So these are necessary steps to do the best preservation for this building. It has suffered from Band-Aids and inexpensive repairs for a century, and we need to do it right. Old Constitution House in Windsor is a prime example of the effects of COVID on our historic sites. It's been closed since 2020. We went back in last year to show our new deputy commissioner and realized that mold is growing on everything. There is a lack of a proper mechanical system, windows that need to be restored, and there's some damage to the roof. This is a pre-1777 tower, and it's now under attack by this mold. It's growing on all the wooden elements, floors, doors, walls. It's even growing on some of the artifacts we have in the building. We can't open this building to the public, and staff can only stay in there for a limited time. We're experiencing some of the same problems over at the Chester Arthur Boyhood Home and Church, which are in Fairfield, but that's to a lesser degree. For Old Constitution House, we just applied past December for a National Park Service grant. This grant was established with the assistance of Senator Leahy. We helped put the language together, to be honest. It is a semi-quincentennial grant run through the National Park Service. It is for all historic sites owned by state preservation offices, states that have ties to the Revolutionary War and existed before 1801. So the first year the Bennington Monument would be able to apply, but we applied Old Constitution House for up to $410,000 to restore the windows, get the new mechanical system in, remediate the mold, and use everything there at all of our other historic sites as we learn. But if we don't get this grant, which we expect to today, we have to use the Capitol Bill because we cannot keep that building closed. We have to stop the mold. And we have the 250th celebration starting in 2025 to 2027. And this is one of our centerpieces.
Did you put dehumidifiers in there to stop the mold? I was sure you did.
Yeah, no, I understand. Same question. for Bennington Monument, we will ask for the max amount, which is $700,000. And what is really fabulous about this grant is there's no match required, which is rare. The President Calvin Coolidge site, which was gifted to the state by First Lady Grace Coolidge and her son John, consists of 29 buildings and structures. There's a barn erected by the president's grandfather, the boyhood home where he was sworn in as president. In fact, this year on April 3rd is the 100th anniversary of the swearing in. And we're going to make a very big celebration of that with our partners, Calvin Coolidge Presidential Foundation. But the foundation of the boyhood home is slipping. The chimneys at the summer White House are failing and water is coming in. The boyhood home, the birthplace has structural issues. And I am just sick that our paths and entries are well below ADA compliance, and we need to fix that. It's a really special site, even if you don't go in the buildings, and we want to make sure people can get around. We do have the engineering plans for the paths and the entryways, so we're trying to move forward with that. And in fact, we've put out, with the assistance of BGS, very large project scopes with kind of the way pre-COVID world worked, with a project manager or a general contractor who would then subcontract for all the little or the different specialties. We were not getting any bids. So now I think in the pre-COVID world, we've heard from a post-COVID world, we've heard from another number of subcontractors, like, I'll come work on your chimneys, but I don't want to be part of this big contract. And maybe we can piece together more chimneys at other sites and get a good contract together. I think the main focus will be on the pathways and as much of the ADA exterior work as we can do before August 3rd. And then after that, we'll really gear up and get something going for these larger projects. In Stratford, if you've never been to Stratford, there is a really special pink Gothic Revival style house. It's known as the Senator Justin Morrill Homestead. The senator was self-taught, and he actually became a scholar and designed his own house and oversaw construction of this really fashionable mansion. It is quite a gem in our collection. It is Vermont's first recognized National Historic Landmark. It was constructed in 1852, and he enlarged it 5 years later as he was heading off to Washington, and he became Vermont's first long-serving congressional delegate. The location he chose is absolutely ideal for a grand house at the base of a mountain, and then he put an ice pond up at the top with underground channels to feed the barnyards, the farm fields, and the gardens. So everything's flowing down into the house. And little has changed at that site, and we know Senator Morrill himself even experienced drainage problems right from the start. Right. So the stone foundation, we did archaeological work this summer, and the stone foundation is built on one side in a way we didn't expect. They're very large, round boulders that he must have cleared fields and just propped everything up. They're not cut on the exterior at all, which leaves some voids for water and all sorts of trouble. But it's holding up really well, except for the moisture, which is being sucked up from basement to roof. When Jamie first started working with the State Historic Sites, I said, can you go down and repair the plaster because it's very wet and deteriorated? And he came back and he's like, no, we have a much bigger problem. The plaster is freezing every year. And for many, many years, we were just repairing it instead of stopping the problem. We applied for a Save America's Treasures grant, which we received in the amount of $227,000. And then we have to match that with $279,000, which will be coming from the Capitol bill. Fiscal year 22, 23, I think. And we're working on the drainage now. we estimate there will be another $300,000 needed to put the porch back on and just get the whole site back buttoned up. And what we really want to do is make sure it stays open so that people can see what we're doing. We had a great deal of attraction when we were doing archaeology. People wanted to come and see firsthand what we were doing. This will allow them to explore the building and grounds in a completely different way and appreciate what we have and how Senator Morrill even designed it. We've had to do, I think it's ground penetrating radar to figure out where the channels are and all the other stuff underground. And then he had a habit of burying his horses on the ground, so the archaeologists have found a bunch of those. We found china that predates the house, so we don't know if he was frugal or there was another building there before it. There's a lot to learn at this site, and we really, really want to share it with people to learn about. There are other major projects that need to be addressed that will enable better interpretation of our sites, bring visitors in, improving our income and enable us to offer more and improve our online presence, our interaction with the public in different ways. Maybe even get exterior monitors like A&R has when people go on our trails and enter the property so we can get counts. But these are our really main priorities, and the minimal funding traditionally provided is not proven sufficient to complete any one of these projects. The evaluations by Jamie and the work we've done very closely with fire safety, BGS, Forest Parks and Rec we've been partnering with, they're using some of our buildings. They've assisted us when trees come down on buildings. So I think we're really using our state partners really well, but the major maintenance funding needs to be improved so that we can undertake good conditions assessments and not make guesses at what we need and stop doing the Band-Aid system of, I will just replace an elevator instead of looking at how that new elevator affects the entire structure itself. And bring fire safety and the police and the elevator people all together to understand when something happens, how do we best address it? We have completed a number of projects despite COVID right now. Just last week, Burgoyne's Kettle, which has been hanging in the monument since 1892, was taken down successfully. Thank you, Jamie. And sent over to a conservator so that we can figure out whether it's a reconstruction from 1892 or it actually belonged to Burgoyne from 1777. And then not put it where it's hanging 10 feet above people. Yeah, so, but put it where you can actually see it and experience it, not inside the monument itself. We've done a lot of structural and siding repairs and painting, roof repairs. We've stabilized 2 of our very significant barns that they need a lot more work. We've done electrical safety improvements. We've worked with BGS Energy Efficiency to change out our museum lights so they're not hot and we get good bang for our buck. We've done chimney and porch reconstructions. We moved the New Haven Depot, we put money into that. We were doing window restorations. We reattached General Stark's sword that had been borrowed. We reconstructed cornices and eaves, and we've just completed the preservation of Morrill's 1859 library. Those are just to name a few. I have Jamie put together a really great list of our projects. On the first page are the projects that are in progress. The vast majority of these are Bennington Monument, and shows which of our existing capital budgets that money is coming from. Last year we got a wonderful boost up to $683,000, which is really helping us move things forward. Because as you can see from FY23, already what we know is hitting $633,000. And that leaves us about $50,000 of just in case or emergency things that come up. The other, the second and third pages are work we know needs to be done, and these are the priority projects. We have cost estimates. Some of these are in-house, some of these are figured out with the assistance of BGS, and some of them we've had actual contractors working with us, so that we know the amount of money that's needed. We're not exactly sure where the funding for all of those is coming from. And then down at the bottom, we've started our 10-year projections. Like, we know the rough estimate we're getting from the contractors working on Bennington Monument is $12 million for the full restoration. We're looking at probably $3 to $4 million for the scaffolding alone. $12 million is not something.
How much did we give you last?
Yeah, it's not, let's do that. What did you receive last year from?
$683,000.
Here's my question. We are never gonna be in a position to bail you out. It looks like you're way over your head. Why don't you go for capital donations and have a capital drive? I mean, people in communities, I'm sure everybody does it, would give you money for their project. How are you gonna get out of this? You're gonna get out of it by this committee.
We've started having those conversations,
Yeah.
like Forest Parks and Rec has an organization set up. We are able through statute to collect donations and funding.
Yeah, but what kind of a drive do you put on to seriously consider people who want to give to historical? There are people in Vermont that would likely give, but you gotta have a capital drive.
We've actually started meeting with people that do fundraising. There's a gentleman we've been meeting with who does fundraising for UVM Medical Center, who lives in Bennington. And
So,
yeah, no, I don't expect to be asking you for $12 million.
No, but I'm saying, how are you gonna come out of this mess? You're getting deeper and deeper in the hole. And there's no, you don't have a plan.
the bad news is as well, is last year we had about $128 million over the 2-year biennium, and this year it looks like we're gonna be about $108 million. So we're gonna be $20 million shy of where we were last year, and so it, you know, I agree with Senator Mazza, and you know, and I do applaud for the grants that you guys are applying for and receiving, but yeah.
There's a lot of money in the state for people who give to the historical. I think, but you gotta have a capital fund.
Well, I think that, and I think, Laura, that you do a great job advocating. Both of you guys do a great job advocating for what's important for the history,
Right.
for the history of what Vermont is. And no question that, you know, I think you guys are being responsible for, you know, squeezing every nickel out of what you get to maximize them. But I agree with Senator Mazza that it's going to be very, very tough to get the type of funding from us that you're going to be looking for. And I hear you that you're not looking for us for $12 million.
Yeah.
Even if we gave them 50,000 more, it's nothing. It's not dropping. It wouldn't matter at all. Another 50 grand would do nothing.
We've been doing more work in-house. Jamie's actually been at Plymouth almost for an entire month every single day, working on projects actually himself. But we also don't have the staff to do that. So we're working with contracting to get more project managers who will actually do some of the work themselves, be contracted that way. That would keep costs down a little bit. And this is actually the first time in the history of this program that we're laying out a list of what needs to be done. We're prioritizing it. We have looked at the catalog of what we own and determined what we didn't need to be owning, what we shouldn't be owning. And we've gotten rid of a number of resources that were better handled at a local level, local historical societies or towns. But it's also hard to give away buildings or deaccession them, I should say, when we're not giving them any money to maintain them.
And this is a 10-year need.
That's where we've started, yeah, we just now started.
If you're coming up with the same amount of money every year, how are you ever gonna get ahead of the game? You're gonna
Right.
be further behind.
Oh,
Because
no.
next year it's gonna be greater and
Right.
greater and greater. you're fighting a losing battle. Very seldom I see something this bad, desperation without some sort of plan of how you come out of this.
I think the first step is to identify what you need and then plan, right?
Yeah, last year's capital bill actually is forcing us to go and do these historic preservation conditions assessments the right way, so we will not be guessing, and it will give us the long-range plan and help us better prioritize. But I really have to applaud Jamie for pulling this together over the past 3 years as he goes and sees these resources.
If you went to a bank to try to borrow money, with this sort of a plan, they would talk to you. I mean, it's just, there's no source of income. I don't know where the income's gonna come from.
Well, we continue to apply for grants, and we will seek out any funding. We will work with contracting to figure out how we can get a fundraising team on board for this, particularly with the Bennington Monument.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Worse than parking there. It is. It's-
It's hard.
I listen, I
Yeah.
hear so many, I can tell you, this Bennington Monument, it's never gonna come out. It just, I don't know what the future of that is, because there's not enough money to cover that place. Every year it's gonna get worse and worse and
Yeah.
worse.
well, it's the second largest in the country, as freestanding masonry site, so that tells you something.
How do you get rehabilitated? We're talking how is it, 300 feet, 200 feet?
302.
Wow, I mean, it's just, like, the staging is what, 3 million?
The scaffolding will be the tallest building in Vermont when it's up.
I feel bad for you. It's just, but boy, I don't know. This is not a good,
I fully recognize and agree, this is an uphill climb, but we've had to take everything apart and really assess what we have, how best to address it, figure out our partners, expand our partners, increase our income, raise our fees. We have a cap of admission fees, $12, so we're raising some of the sites up to that.
Well, I don't want to tell you how to operate your business. I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to tell you, as you know, the capital bill has always been a source of funding for you, but I think it's going to be on the low end of where it's at. And I can see, looking, we talked to the state, well, one of the economists today and transportation, and they don't have a very rosy picture about what's probably going to happen in the next few years, and we're running out of the monies from the federal government. It's getting less and less and less. So we'll do our best to accommodate you folks. There's a lot of important need in the state, and I don't know if maybe you guys top that list, but there's a lot of need in the state as well. So we'll do our best as we go down through. I'm sure. We're probably going to see you again once we have the bill in hand, which sounds like we're going to have that on Friday. And, we'll go from there as we work through our process to see where all sugar's off.
Great, thank you, I really appreciate it. These sites do matter, and they.
Yeah, I agree.
Significant for our tourism.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Just a lot of money.
Yeah, no, it totally is. It totally is. And I think doing it with line items is not the best way to do it. I think we need to have a regular known number that we're putting forward with justified projects that have been supported by conditions assessments. And that's the path we're taking.
Jamie, anything you'd like to add while you're right there?
I would just for a minute. For the record, my name is Jamie Duggan, I'm Director of Preservation and Historic Sites. And I think one point I'd like to just leave you with is understanding that we do have limited funds, and we've been doing what we can with the funds available. And this issue of deferred maintenance is one that has lasted for decades, quite honestly. And we are at a critical point where we can't just keep kicking the can down the road and still provide safe spaces for the public and especially environments that are conducive for the buildings and the artifacts. So it is a real problem that we're trying to understand better and, you know, move forward in a way that addresses those issues as we can. You know, the list could be as long or short as it needs to be. They're all priorities, but, you know, we'll continue to do what we can with the funds that we have and, you know, continue to maintain our buildings as best we can.
Well, we appreciate it very much. We appreciate you hanging around. Sorry that we got a little long-winded on the other one. You know, what you guys do is very important. And as I said, we'll do our best. We'll see the Capitol bill on Friday, and I expect that we'll probably hear from both of you again before we end this session.
Yeah, we have roadside markers, underwater preserves, the
Yeah.
barn grants, preservation grants, unmarked burial funds.
Yeah.
There's a number of items that I can come back and give details about.
Okay. What I have promised the committee, we have 3 new members on it, is that once we get that, we're going to go down through the stakeholders and the people who want to come in for another ask before it's all said and done. We really want to be fair with everybody. We want to give everybody a chance to get back in here and have their faces in front of us. So we thank you very much. We do, and good luck. And I think we'll be chatting again.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank
Very well.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we do as well. Well, committee, anything else to share before we go on offline, or any thoughts, anything?